Welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today I'm pleased to bring on a friend of mine, Benji Hadfield. Now, we grew up in the same town, but we ended up really far apart. Benji actually moved to North Pole, Alaska, so he's trying to get as far away from me as possible. Uh, and he's a dentist up there. He also has a podcast that he does on the side. He's an amazing photographer. And just his whole life journey has been such an interesting story. I thought I had to bring him on to tell part of his story. So welcome to the show, Benji.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to see you again. And man, it's been a long time. When was the last time we saw each other? It's probably been 90,
A long time.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe a little before that. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I grew up with Benji's older brother was a close friend of mine. And I've seen Joe several times over the last years, but I don't think I've seen you since we moved away 20 years ago. So it's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Been a little while. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Yeah. Good. Well, yeah. So just jump right in with kind of my story of what brought me here.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we both grew up in the same small town, just a few blocks away from each other. And my life plan sort of evolved around my sophomore year of college. I started taking seriously the idea of, okay, what am I going to go do for a living? You know, I loved the college. First of all, I just loved the environment of being able to learn different things for the sake of learning. And sometimes that can be a problem because I ended up changing my major every year because there's just so many cool things to say, well, maybe I'm going to go do this, or maybe I want to go do that. And so my sophomore year, I kind of got this direction where I said, a career in dentistry is appealing to me. And often I get the question when people are getting to know me, they'll say, why? Because it's one of those things as a teenager, that's like the least appealing thing is to say, okay, I can earn money all these different ways. How about I just stare in people's mouths all day and I just put my hands in their mouths all day? And that is not appealing. And I'll be the first to tell you, there was never a point in my life where I thought, yeah, I want to put my hands in people's mouths and get paid for it. Like that wasn't it. So what brought me to that point, I'd actually, from my own setbacks early on in high school, I ended up having 3 knee surgeries in high school. A condition that the more I learn about it as I grow, at the time they said, we don't know why this happens. And then I researched the same thing 20 years later. And it's related to the fact that I played a lot of basketball, but it wasn't a basketball injury. It was just because I was using my legs and my knees a lot. Ended up having 3 knee surgeries in high school and then 2 more in college. And that kind of drew me into the medical field. And so I just looking at my own x-rays and MRI images and then kind of being appreciative of what was done for me, I thought I would love to help people. I feel like I'm smart enough that I can kind of get into whatever college, medical school, wherever path I want to do. I think I can do it. And I think that would be a rewarding thing to do. So I started down that journey, and then pretty quickly, just through talking to different professionals in the various healthcare fields, the people that were surgeons, and this was a long time ago, and don't make your career decision based on what I'm saying, because that was a different time, and that was for me. But the surgeons were saying, I don't know about this. They didn't have, it was a long road to get there. They didn't have their freedom and family time in the evenings. And they said, I would go to dental school if I were able to do it over again. And meanwhile, the dentists were like, yeah, I love it. No regrets. And so I thought, okay, here's a group of people that have somehow been able to get past that. It's gross to look at people's mouths all day, and they're happy with their decision. And so it was kind of a leap of faith saying, I think I could be happy with that too. And they're right. Fast forward several years, we get to that point where we're actually seeing patients, and it was gross for about 15 minutes. And then you get over it because you have gloves on and a mask on and everything. So I found it to be a very rewarding career. Fast forward just a little bit more, had an opportunity to come work in my hometown. And that's, everybody loves that idea, right? I'm going to go back and be near my parents as they grow old, and everything's going to be perfect. We bought a house, we settled down, and then things didn't work out. And that might be a recurring theme in my story here, is things didn't work out. Not that I had a lack of skill or competence or anything like that, but the year was 2009 when I came out of school. And if you recall, in 2006, there was a pretty big recession that hit. And in dentistry, it takes a few years for that to trickle down to where it really impacts dentistry. The reason is when the economy goes south, people still have their benefits and they say, oh, I better get this done before I can't get this done. And so there's a little bit of a boom in dentistry when everyone else is hurting because people are motivated to get things done. And so then that trickles down. In about 2009 turns out to be kind of the worst time to just say, I'm going to go be a dentist. And then, as you recall, our small town that we grew up in had one main employer that probably employed maybe 40-50% of the population there. And they just decided, I mean, I don't think anyone decides this, they had to go through massive layoffs. And so working in a town of about 20,000 people where 4,000 people get laid off is hard. And so that career that I thought I had laid out in front of me, it dried up pretty quick. And so the dentist I was working for, and he was planning on selling me the practice, he changed his mind. And I don't really hold that against him because he did kind of back out of our deal, but the circumstances he was dealing with weren't what he was planning on. Things changed. And at the time I was really disappointed. I mean, that's an understatement. I was pretty upset. I kind of was mad at him for a really long time because I felt like, hey, that's not what we agreed on. But, 10 years have gone by, and now I'm understanding how sometimes bigger forces out there, like the economy, they can make you do decisions that you really don't want to do. And it's a hard position to be in. So I hold no resentment against him. It was a tough spot for him to be in, but that wasn't what we planned on. And so for a long time, we had to say, okay, we can't sell the house because everybody's trying to sell their house. And I'd look down my street out my front yard and see 4 different for sale signs. And half of them are bank-owned homes that people can buy. It's the exact same home as mine, but the bank is selling it for half price. And so forget about me trying to sell my house. I can't sell it for half price. And so we were stuck. We had this home we were stuck in, and I looked around, and the first week I said, okay, I'm just going to, anything that's a possible outcome from here, we're going to do. And so I found a dental practice that was for sale and was really small. And it was about an hour away from where we lived. And I said, I can make that work. And so we went for it. And the bank said, yeah, you've been out of school long enough. We'll loan you the money to buy the practice. And so that was something that kind of got us out of that situation and got us by for a while. Meanwhile, before leaving that town, we were still living there. We'd had 2 little boys at the time that were just the coolest little kids. They're 2 years apart. And so when they were about 4 years old, or no, maybe about 3 years old and 1 year old, my wife had her first miscarriage. And that was something that really caught us off guard because, we'd had 2 kids, no problems, everything was great. And then suddenly it didn't work out. And I'll never forget that feeling of that day, just saying, it's sad and it's hard. It was early on enough that, for me personally, there wasn't a lot of mourning or loss, but my wife is just the coolest person I've ever met and the sweetest woman in the world. And I want to do everything for her. I want to be there for her. And I remember just feeling kind of useless to try to help her feel better and get through that. It took some time. And fast forward a little bit, working in the next city and still living at home, we were blessed with a wonderful baby daughter, and still about spaced 2 years apart. So we've got a boy, and a girl that are each 2 years apart, and everything was great. Things were back on track. My practice was growing. I felt confidence again as not only a dentist but a business owner. Things were trending the right direction. Everything was awesome. 2 years later, we were finally able to sell our house and only lose $5,000 on it, which, at the time I was super mad about. I was like, oh man, we've been here 4 years and we have to pay money to leave this house. That's not how it's supposed to work. Like, you're supposed to pay money every month, and then when you move, you get the money back because you sell it. And the economy is a bigger force than my logic was planning on. And the home had lost value, so we paid a lot of money to leave the house. And we were able to just kind of rent a very modest, kind of a glorified trailer home for a while. And that was something I had to get used to, as I was saying, all right, we're living within a budget. The practice is going well. We've still got a bright future. But for a time, for 2 years, I had to kind of reconcile the fact that to the community, everybody calls me doctor. That's a title that kind of carries some respect. And then I go home and I'm like, I have for sure got the worst house in the neighborhood, and those two ideas kind of were competing with my pride, but that was the situation we were in. And at the time, I mean, we were doing our best, working our hardest, trying to, make the best of what life had dealt us. And that included for a couple of years living in a really simple, very modest home. And things were going great. And then time goes on and I said, we never really sat down and said, let's go live in this city. This is just kind of where we ended up. And just randomly out of the blue, driving down the freeway with my wife one day, I said, hey, of everywhere we've lived, because we'd met in Logan, Utah State University. We got married when I was living in Southern California going to dental school, and had spent 4 years in California. And then we lived in the small town, and now we're living in a bigger city. I said, all these places we've been, where were you the happiest? And that was kind of what started this conversation. That just got this seed of an idea in our heads that we don't have to stay here forever. And it's one of those things I didn't realize you can't have that kind of a conversation and then put it back in the box and move on from it. It was a conversation that once the idea of let's go have an adventure caught hold in our minds, we were gone. We didn't realize it at the time, but we were already sold on let's go have an adventure. So I explored the idea of let's sell the practice. Now, I talked about losing money on the home. When I sold the practice, I ended up gaining quite a bit. I'd built up that business to where we sold it for about 25% more than we bought it for in just 4 years. So that's something I was really proud of. Thought, man, that's a cool accomplishment, and something that kind of gave us a good head start for our next stop. And we just we drew a big circle. We said, okay, in fact, we literally had a map on the wall of our bedroom for about 6 months, just so we could stare at the map of the United States and say, what if we moved here? Or what if we moved there? What if we moved there? And I'm in a career where we can move anywhere we want. There's not a place that they say, no, we don't like dentists here. I mean, people don't like the dentist, I'll admit that, but you can go live anywhere. And not everybody, in fact, I'd be shocked if anyone else came to the conclusion we came to. After 6 months of saying, what if we lived here, here, North Pole, Alaska is the place we chose. And we have our reasons, but that's uniquely ours, where we said, okay, we could live in this state or that state or that state. And there's a little bit of difference here and there. But if we don't have family or cousins in any of these places or anything actually, we do have cousins up here. But if it's all kind of the same, we kept coming back to Alaska is unique. That's something where we can't replicate the Alaskan experience if we go into any of these number of other states. You could say that about Hawaii, and given every state, every place is unique. Every place is going to have something special or unique or different about it. But Alaska just seemed kind of like a different planet. And we weren't sold right away saying, all right, let's go live the rest of our lives in Alaska. But we said, let's go try it. We can go give it a year. I've bought and sold a dental practice at this point, and there's no harm in saying let's go do that again. If we end up hating it there, we can always start over again. And we weren't opposed to that. And I love that about my wife, that she has the spirit of adventure in here, just like I do. And so yeah, we ended up we took a trip where we looked at all these different cities in Alaska, where I'd spent 6 months networking. One of the best things you could do to further your career is to just call people, introduce yourself, tell them your story, and make friends. And so that's what I would do. With a time zone difference, I would get done with work at 4 o'clock, which meant it was still 2 o'clock in Alaska. And I'd say, all right, these dental offices are all still open. And I'd call one and say, hi, my name is Benji. I'm a dentist, and I'm interested in working in Alaska. Is your dentist thinking about selling or retiring anytime in the near future? No, he's not. Do you know of anybody who might be? And I'd gather phone numbers. And so I just out there hustling, I kind of gathered all these opportunities. And so when it came time that we could go visit and kind of take a look around and explore, I had 4 solid leads rounded up that we got to go just fly all over different parts of Alaska and explore. And it was kind of funny because it was in December, which is not like prime tourist season. But it was kind of cool to see, all right, this is what Alaska looks like when it's cold and when it's dark. And when people just aren't like overrun with tourists looking at bears, all the bears are asleep, things like that. In North Pole, where I'm at, just a little bit outside of Fairbanks, it's not the North Pole. That's another question we get a lot. Is I didn't think the North Pole was in Alaska. I thought it was north of there. The actual North Pole is north of everything. It's the very furthest north. In Alaska, there's a small town called North Pole, and when I say small town, I'm talking about 10% of the town that we grew up in. There's about 3,000 people in North Pole itself. So we're kind of out there, really small town. Anyway, we ended up falling in love with it. What I thought was going to be terrible on paper, when you read about Alaska, you read, okay, it can get to -40 quite frequently. And in the middle of the winter, you only have about 3 hours of sunlight. And even the sunlight that you do have, it's not the same as like a bright sunny day. The sun is just barely over the horizon. So it's just barely peaking there. It's like a twilight for just a part of the day. And when you read about that, you think, man, that would be hard. But here's what you can't read about. You can't read about what it feels like to live here. And that is hard for a lot of people. I'm not going to lie. Some people struggle with the cold and with the dark. But to be here and experience, okay, this is what the Northern Lights look like. And one of the first things I did when I got here was I bought a kayak. And kayaking at 2 a.m. on a lake where it's not dark, and instead of being dark, it's this gorgeous sunset. Now, everywhere else in the world, you've got a sunset for like 20, 30 minutes tops, and then it's dark. Here, you've got a sunset that lasts for hours. And so you've got that beautiful pink clouds and orange clouds, and the clouds are moving, so it changes. And that's one of the first things when I started photography was I realized in one night, the clouds and everything change so much, and I can kayak from one part of the lake to another lake. I can make it look like I've been out on my kayak for 3 weeks just in one night of taking all these different sunset pictures. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's just this beautiful paradise. And Wikipedia can't tell you that about living in Alaska. They just say, yeah, it gets 40 below and it's dark and there's a lot of mosquitoes and things like, the obvious things. But living here, you just think, wow, you can let yourself be surprised by all these amazing things. And anyway, back to my story. I don't want you guys to think that I'm being sponsored by like the Travel Alaska Committee or something, but it's really cool living here. Just before we moved here, we'd had, I believe, our third miscarriage. There was another miscarriage we had after my daughter, and then one right before we moved here that was what's called an ectopic pregnancy. And so that's a little bit worse than the regular type of miscarriage because it involves injury to the fallopian tube. And it's something where, as my wife was being treated for it, I was chatting with the doctor saying, hey, what if we didn't ever come in for this? I mean, which is a silly question because it's extremely painful. Nobody doesn't come in for that. It's really, really, really painful. But I said, if we were living in caveman times, what would have happened? And the answer is the mom would have just bled to death and died internally because it's an injury that doesn't heal. And so we had to have emergency surgery. Pregnancy ended. The fallopian tube was removed. It was something that was just, it was rough, and it was just a few weeks before we were moving. And in addition to the emotional pain, there was, all right, now we have to continue selling everything we can so that we can fit what we can in our luggage and in a trailer and then move. It was just a really hard thing to deal with. But we kind of pulled together and got through it. And like anything that's hard in life, we learned a lot from it and learned a little bit about ourselves. And I think we left that experience a little bit stronger. And in a marriage, you can allow things like that to bring you closer together or to be kind of a wedge between the two of you. And it depends entirely on how you respond to it. And I can say without a doubt, everything like that we've gone through has brought us together, where I feel like we're strong. The bond between us is, there's no one else I've been through anything like that with before. And it's been hard, but it's been good for us. And the reason, by now we're just at, I think 3, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in the story. There were 4 more. And each one of them were more frustrating because at first we thought, miscarriages happen. And the doctors will tell you, a lot of times they'll happen and people don't even realize they happen. And there's statistics out there of, it's okay, it happens. And every single time the doctor said, things look great. There's nothing wrong with Melissa. That's my wife's name. Her body's great. Everything looks fine. There's no sickness, no disease, behavior. We haven't been doing anything risky. There's nothing that needs to change. It just happens. But it's hard when you hear it just happens over and over and over again. And we got to the point where by now, instead of having a 2-year gap between each of our kids, our kids were a little bit older. We'd had our daughter was 5, the sons were 7 and 9. And rather than evenly spaced out, it was like, okay, during the span of the next 5-7 years, a whole bunch of them, to where in total, we'd lost 7 pregnancies. And some of them were just kind of, well, it's early on and we've been through this before and we'll be okay. It doesn't mean it's easy, but we know how to get through it. One of them in particular was just before Christmas time, and it really put a damper on everything. We were able to be back. We were with family where we both grew up, which was kind of nice. But I mean, my wife just was in a dark room for 3 days crying. And, it's something I never want to see or experience again. It was really hard. That one was a little bit further along, where I'd felt used to the idea and kind of felt like this is the spirit of the little kid, and kind of, even as the dad, I was attached to this, kid that was soon to join our family, and it was rough.
Benji, can I pause you for a second there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think, so this isn't a normal topic for an assembly to talk about miscarriages and honestly,
and for little kids or for teenagers too, right?
Right. And honestly, I didn't even think about that growing up. It never occurred to me that, my wife and I would have a miscarriage. And if we did, what the consequences were. For me, we had 1 miscarriage. And for me, it wasn't a big deal because I wasn't carrying the baby. But as you just mentioned, especially if you're further along in the pregnancy, my wife was attached to that baby and she had feelings.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit curious here from Melissa's perspective, just because for most of this, you were away from family. She didn't have her normal support unit with her. Obviously, she had you, and I suspect part of the reason you guys grew together is because you were all she had, right? You had that unit. What did Melissa do through this? Because this can be really, really hard for people to have a miscarriage, and especially if you're having it over and over. What did Melissa do to keep her spirits up, to keep positive? Obviously, you kept trying to have a child, and so she didn't give up hope or anything. But what was she doing through all this?
Well, that's an interesting point you bring up, because I had begun to say things like, hey, we got 3 awesome kids. We can be happy with that. And the reason, not just that it was hard for me, but it was frustrating for me to see my favorite person on earth hurt over and over. And so I was ready to be done. And she just had it within her saying, I know we have 3 amazing kids. And she didn't want to sound ungrateful, but we weren't done, and a mom knows. When a mom knows, and you can't use logic and say, come on, she knew. And so there's no stopping that. The funny thing, you mentioned other people. This is a good thing to know, because some of you listening, you're going to find yourselves in a situation going through something hard. All of us, everybody here, is going to find themselves in situations trying to help someone else who's going through something hard. And the difference is really, there's a contrast between the reactions when you share with people. A lot of people, they just show up and they say, hey, I've made dinner for you for the next 3 nights, or, I've done it. I'm going to take your kids so they can be out of the house and you can have some alone time. And people just show up and do things. And they don't just take your kids, they ask, but they're willing to go above and beyond. One of the things that kind of surprised me is a lot of people, they want to be that role of the problem solver, and that backfire. If someone shows up and says, well, what did you do? Or have you been doing this? Have you been getting your vitamins? Have you been doing, and that's really not helpful, because what you're actually saying is, you're not smart enough to have a baby. I am. And that is the worst thing a mourning mother can hear, and so what people need in a time like that is not a problem solver. And it's something I have to remind myself, because I'm naturally geared to be a problem solver. Like, all right, this is a problem, let's fix it. Problem, fix it, over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are wired like that. But witnessing people kind of reaching out to us, and I'm not mad, they had good intentions. Everybody has good intentions. But the people who are willing to help and say, here's what I can do for you, that is really, really appreciated. It goes a long way. Whereas the people that just show up and say, well, let's talk about this and let's fix it, and if you listen to me next time, it's really, it can compound the frustration and the problem and the heartache that somebody's already going through. And that's not just applicable to losing a baby. That's life.
Right.
Someone loses their job, you say, well, were you nice to your boss? It's like you're kind of insulting the person, saying, well, if you were me, you wouldn't have lost your job, and there's kind of a fine line between like being helpful and insulting somebody. And so you're right. We were kind of, a lot of these, we were off on our own. The biggest thing, I find myself as a dentist saying this a lot. When I remove a tooth, and if I remove a tooth that's abscess and the person's been in a ton of pain and it's just not a simple extraction, I have to say to the patient, time is your best friend. I can't now go in and do more procedures to make this heal faster. Your body's just going to heal. So I know the next few days are going to hurt. You just have to be patient and give it time, and you will feel better if you give it time. And that's what I say after a lot of extractions, especially when the tooth extraction isn't smooth. It takes a little bit more effort to get, it's kind of like a surgery, removing a tooth sometimes. And that's kind of how it is emotionally. So my biggest advice is be patient with yourself. Understand that you don't have to be okay. There's a long period of time where you can be sad, and that's the right response. Be sad. You should be sad. And so be patient with yourself. Allow yourself time to just get through this. One thing that has kind of stuck with me, sometimes you're driving in the middle of nowhere in the desert and listen to the radio, and you learn a little nugget from an interview with somebody that sticks with you. Well, one of these things, they were interviewing a happiness expert, which, realize they have these people out there that have just studied the psychology of happiness. And one thing that I thought was fascinating is you consider all these things in your life that could potentially go wrong, and let your imagination run wild. Like, let's say you lose your hand, or you go blind, or everybody you love dies, like these terrible things. They've studied people that have experienced these, and they found that 3 months is what it takes for a person to go from the level of happiness they were to get over something hard and return to the exact same level of happiness they were, which blew my mind, because I thought, I can't go blind and then 3 months later be like, yeah, I'm fine. But what they found was that happiness isn't a result of everything on the outside. It's all up here. And if you're the kind of person that's going to be okay with, oh, it's raining today and I didn't want it to rain, you're going to kind of have the same reaction when it's raining and you don't want it to rain and you're blind. You're not going to spend the whole rest of your life saying, shoot, I'm blind again this morning. There goes my plans this weekend. You do get over things, and you adapt, and you end up being just as happy as you were. And which blows my mind, but I believe it. I think that that's something internal. It's something where, you kind of reach this level that you want to be at, and you stay there. The other thing that this same radio interview, this was like 15 years ago too, that I heard this, they were saying the more important your own personal happiness is to you, the less likely it is to be achieved. And it blew my mind, because then I thought of all kinds of religious teachings that are like, okay, if you give your life to other people and serve other people, then that's how you achieve. And I thought that's exactly what these scientists are now saying is, if I say, oh man, I really hope I have a good weekend, I'm probably not going to have a good weekend. If that's very important to me, then I'm setting myself up for failure. But if I go into it with kind of an open mind, saying, let's see what I can do to make someone else's life better, and I end up having a great weekend for me, that's a good surprise,
Right. Now, I want to step back from this for a second, because I think a lot of the kids listening to this, we're in a time right now where life hasn't gone according to plan. And what you're suggesting here is that happiness is a choice. And and that we can do something to dictate whether we're happy or not. So I want to push back on what you just said, because you're saying the people who are seeking after their own personal happiness the most are less likely to achieve it. So what should be kids doing? You know, we're in this time right now where we're hunkered down at home, and if happiness is a choice, what can you do to ensure that you're happy? I mean, is it just saying, okay, I choose to be happy, or is there more to it than that?
Here's where it comes from. The happiest people on earth, they derive that pleasure and that joy from healthy relationships with the people around them, like quality, healthy relationships, which means, okay, you look at all these things, and I won't deny, I love my kayak. It's a fun thing, and I can sit in it and paddle around and take pictures and catch fish and listen to audiobooks, and I'm a happy dude. But at the end of the day, if that's all I've got, it's kind of empty. So on the other hand, I look at my house. Who else lives in my house with me? I've got my wife. I've got 3 beautiful children, and then, spoiler alert, another child now. So we'll get to that part later. But I've got 4 amazing kids and a wife, and love each one of them to death. And they are my number one priority in life, you know, to say, all right, I'm going to make sure that their needs are met. I'm living my life not just for me. I'm living my life for them. And that works. You know, when you have healthy relationships with the people closest to you, there's no way you won't be happy. So if you're going to say, all right, I'm going to wake up this morning and do whatever I can to make sure I have a happy life, work on those relationships. And this is going to sound like a lecturing dad here. If you guys are teenagers listening and you fight with your siblings, wake up today and say, I'm going to do one thing that's nice for somebody who lives with me that I wouldn't normally do. And then the next day, do 2 things, you know, just little steps of working on that, saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to improve the relationships of those around me. And you can't control other people's response. You can't control other people's reactions. You can only control what you say and what you do. But if you work on that, that's the secret. That's how to have a happy life.
Awesome. Good advice. You know, it's interesting as a teacher, I'll often challenge my students, do something nice for someone. And often they'll pick their friends or whatever. Right now, you have to pick your family because that's the only people that you're going to see. And yeah. Last week as a class, we had this challenge, do random acts of kindness. And as I started reading what my students were doing, it occurred to me exactly what you're suggesting here. When we put our time and energy on the relationships that matter most, that's going to bring us the most happiness. So we can still serve our friends, we can still serve strangers, and that's going to bring us happiness. But if we're working with our spouse or with our sibling and trying to serve them and make them happy, that's the biggest bang for your buck, I think.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Now we have to hear the end of you had a 4th child, so let's hear that. And then if we have time, I still want to hear about your house.
So those are related. Those are directly related. They're
cool.
the same story. So here's another insult to injury. You lose pregnancies, you have to be hospitalized. Those things are very expensive. And it's something where with the last one that was just kind of the worst one, actually the second to last one, we ended up having to be hospitalized, and our health insurance premiums were crazy, and it was the worst health insurance plan. Meanwhile, I mean, the landscape of health insurance in this country changed drastically during the time of me telling this story, of the story happening. And it's something where it put us in financial tough spots. And I know, okay, I'm a doctor, I'm a dentist, I earn a lot of money. But with that means the insurance companies look at you and say, okay, your insurance premiums are $2,500 a month for a family your size, your age, your location. And so it's like, all right, that's a good chunk of change that comes out just for the premiums. And then you have to pay everything on top of that. And then it turns out, because we were traveling, we were out of network when we didn't think we were out of network. And it just became this huge, massive amount of debt in addition to the student loan debt and all these other debts we were carrying. And so we were in a tough spot. And we were to the point where I thought, you know, I don't know if we can really even afford to keep trying to have a baby if things go wrong like this again and again and again. And out of the blue, one night, our house burned down, and it really that catches the listener off guard. That caught us off guard. It was a Sunday night. We were watching America's Funniest Home Videos with the kids, Everything was great. And then there's kind of a funny smoky smell, but everybody here in Alaska heats their homes with wood, or most people do. So smelling a little bit of smoke isn't that weird. But this was just kind of a different flavor where I thought, no, that's not right. And I went and checked, and our chimney stack had actually had a fire. This is something you can Google if you want. It happens. It's called a chimney fire. And we had kept the chimney extremely clean. Our landlord has been in Alaska forever. He builds houses. He knows the ins and outs of the chimneys. It shouldn't have happened. On paper, everything was perfect. It just happened. So there was a fire in the chimney, made the metal part, of the stack that comes up just glowing hot. It caught the house on fire. And then we didn't realize that there's a ton of insulation. The fire was well underway in between the ceiling and the roof before we even knew. And so I stepped out of the house, looked at it, and said, oh, no. I called 911. And the first thing I said is, I think my house might be on fire. And those were the words I used, because I thought, something's not right here. I had no idea that it was definitely on fire. At that point, it was pretty much gone, and I didn't know it. And so they said, okay, number one, just get everyone out of the house. Don't worry about anything else, and don't try it. I was saying, should I go up the ladder and try and work on it with an extinguisher? And they said, no, don't do that. We will be there soon. We will do that. So we come outside, and we didn't grab anything with us because it was so small. I said, yeah, it's just the corner of the house. The firefighters will show up, they'll put it out, we'll be fine. And we're in the driveway watching. Actually, it was 25 degrees below zero. So we were in the neighbor's house looking through their window watching. And went from a little fire to, oh, no, this is going to take some time to rebuild, to suddenly noticing that the whole roof is on fire. It dawned on me, we're not going back in, and everything's gone. And it just caught me totally off guard that, of course, had I known, there's a million things you think, okay, I could have grabbed this or this or this. I could have gotten this out, the computer, documents, a painting that my mom painted for me of the city of Munich where I lived for a couple of years, and all these little things that mean something to you. And I thought, man, I could have grabbed them. I had time to grab them. I had a chance to grab them, but I had no idea that the house was going to be a total loss. And so it kind of snuck up on us like that. Like, we weren't ever really in any physical danger, but poof, everything was gone except what we had on us. And it was funny because people say, so you got out of the house with just your shirt on your back, right? I wasn't wearing a shirt. I didn't have a shirt. I had no shirts. And I was wearing basketball shorts. I threw on my boots. I threw on a coat, and that was it. And my phone, my wife left her phone in the house, so we just had the one phone. And my daughter was really rattled by the fact. So I'm going to time out life advice. Don't ever yell at anybody. And then when you yell, you can get their attention. Okay. So I don't ever yell at my children. And so to suddenly say, everybody get out of the house, it's on fire. I can't, I'm holding back. If I yell it again, they're all going to run out of the house. But for me to yell, it's time to get out of the house. That got their attention. And my daughter was so rattled that she put on one of her boots and one of my wife's boots. I don't know why. So she ran out of the house with mismatched boots, which meant the next day we had to carry her everywhere because she didn't even have boots. And it's wintertime in Alaska. Anyway, it was something where we lose everything. We got an insurance payment for, we were renters. We didn't get a house replacement, but we had a policy for all of our stuff that we lost. And it's kind of like instantly liquidating all of your goods, saying, okay, let's just magically sell everything we own, and then we get money for it. And of course, they adjust because it's not all brand new, so you don't get to go buy new stuff. But you say, okay, do we really need to replace all the stuff we had? And it was an opportunity. And I have to also admit, we have plenty of friends and family who came, they rallied around us. People came together and donated. And so suddenly, from being in a position where it's like, I don't know if we can afford to try to have a kid anymore, to, hey, we have nothing in the world but a little bit of cash. We could do that. And so everything felt different this time around. And about 9 months and 2 weeks after the house fire, we welcomed a little boy into our home. And it was something where, yeah, the house fire is terrible. I don't wish that on anyone, but I'm so glad it happened to me. This boy, his middle name is Phoenix, because, Phoenix
out of the ashes,
dies and is reborn out of the ashes. And this kid is a result of one of these terrible tragedies you wouldn't wish on anyone. That's sort of, and he, maybe it would have happened another way, who's to say, but that's the way that was sort of what enabled him to join our family. And as just the happiest kid in the world. My friend and neighbor here is a psychiatrist. He lives across the street from me. And this kid was smiling at like on day 3. And I said, hey, I know when babies smile, it's just gas, right? And I said, I swear this kid is smiling and he means it. And the psychiatrist said, no, babies, he says he's smiling. And he's not smiling because he's happy. He's smiling because his face is locking onto your face and he's mimicking what he sees. And I thought, man, no wonder this kid smiles all the time, because I mean, we love all of our children and everybody loves all of their children. But this kid meant so much to us, and he brought so much happiness and so much joy. This has got to be in the top 1% of babies who've ever been smiled at. You know, like he is smiled at all the time because of how happy he makes everyone that's looking at his face. And so, and he's just a happy kid. You know, he kind of, well, now he's in the terrible twos. So he's happy unless he's throwing a tantrum. He threw the stupidest tantrum. Kids, this is the tantrum I had to deal with yesterday. I changed his diaper. It's just pee. It's not a super gross one, but I changed it. And he started yelling at me saying, no, I want the other one. It's like, okay, you want a different diaper? No, he wanted the one I just took off of him. He wanted me to take this diaper full of pee and put it back on him. And I wasn't going to do it because he's 2 and I'm 38 and I know better than him. That's what he decided to throw a tantrum about. And that's what 2-year-olds are like. So just so you know, if no one ever tells you, that is what toddlers are like. But bring all the joy of the world. I mean, he's an amazing kid. He's just super clever, super funny. Love him to death. One final thought on that whole happiness idea too. The kayak that I've mentioned a few times. In fact, my whole photography thing, my website is alaskankayak.com. It's because I'm an Alaskan and I do a lot of my photography from a kayak. So alaskankayak.com. The kayak is kind of the symbol to me of the freedom in Alaska that I've come to love. And it was in the house like everything else I had. And I thought in the days after the fire, I thought, I wonder what happened to that. And so I went back to the exact site where the kayak was, and there was absolutely no remains of it. You know, I thought maybe there's a pile of goo because it's plastic, but it was gone. The truck bed that it was in, the truck was torched and everything. There was no evidence of any kayak having ever been there. And I realized these temperatures, we're talking several thousand degrees, this kayak vaporized. So then I got thinking philosophically about, okay, all of the elements. There's a lot of plastic that makes this kayak that meant a lot to me. I mean, it was my thing that I liked having. And it turned into vapor and was gone. And all of the molecules that made that kayak, they're still here on the earth. The science teachers will agree we can't create or destroy matter. You know, we could just change the state it's in. That kayak, everything that built the kayak, it still exists. It's just in a different form right now. It's in a different state. And I got thinking about my own body. You know, it's the same thing about that. I'm made up of molecules. And maybe part of me used to be a kayak sometime, you know, like all of this stuff has always been on the earth forever. And the easiest way to deal with something like a house fire is to recognize that whatever you own, you don't really own. You're using it for a little while. It's always been on the earth, and it always will be on the earth. And maybe it's in a form right now that's kind of cool, like a boat or a four-wheeler or a kayak or whatever fun thing you have. But it's temporary. And if you view all of your stuff as temporary from the beginning, it doesn't hurt when you lose it. Because you can say, you know what, that was never mine for very long anyway. Every single one of us, when we die, we lose everything we have, you know, all of our stuff on the earth. I got to experience it before I die, you know, but we're all going to part ways with all of our stuff. And so it was a time of deep reflection for me where I know I sound like a hippie, but I had a lot of stuff to think about, you know, and no, like I didn't have an Xbox to play or anything. So I spent a lot of time thinking. And that's the conclusion I came to, is to just, if you don't ever get attached to material goods and to your physical things, you're going to have an easier time with everything life throws at you.
That's awesome. Good advice, Benj. As we wrap up here, just a couple points I want to make, and then I'll give you the last word. But first, thank you for sharing your whole story. I've never heard it. I had no idea that Phoenix was 9 months and 2 weeks after the fire, and how the timeline all worked with that. Right now, we have kids who are at home. They're living a life of uncertainty. We've never experienced something like this pandemic, and so kids are worried. They're nervous. And I think your story is going to resonate with a lot of people because you lost basically everything. We're able to start over in a sense and recognize that the most important things were the relationships, were your own growth and development. And what we haven't spent much time today talking about was that in addition to kayaking and your photography, you continue to look at travel and projects. That you've had a podcast where you do book reviews, and you're finding things that bring you fulfillment. And right now, kids are struggling to find things that will bring them fulfillment. Instead, they're saying, I'm bored, I'm stuck at home. And so before you wrap up with this, I just like your thoughts on that. What can kids be doing at home to find what will bring them happiness and joy and satisfaction? What can they do to counteract this boredness? Is that a word? Being bored that they're feeling. What's your advice in that regards?
That boredom is such a blessing. Here's the thing. You mentioned photography. So I take pictures of the Northern Lights. In fact, last night I was out in the woods, and this is just a crazy aside. I heard this. It's 2:15 a.m. and I'm in the middle of the woods all by myself, and there's kind of a frozen lake, and I'm watching the Northern Lights, which by itself is a cool experience. And there's these weird animal noises that started, and it was just crazy, shrill, shrieking, echoing through the trees. I've never experienced anything like that, and that happened like 10 hours ago, like just barely. So I'm kind of an old man. You're an old man now too, right? We're kind of getting to that midlife stage, and something I'd never experienced before in my life just barely happened. And I love that. I love that about life, that you never know. I'm going to quote Tom Hanks' character in Castaway. He says, I'm going to wake up. Tomorrow's a new day, and you never know what the tide may bring. And when you watch Castaway, you recognize how powerful that line is. The tide may bring something you weren't expecting. And so hearing some crazy animal noise shrieking and scaring me like half to death isn't like on my bucket list of, man, I want to be freaked out in the woods. But looking back, it's like, man, that was a cool thing that I didn't know yesterday was going to happen to me. I didn't know 6 years ago that I would want to take pictures someday. Being a photographer is a consequence of living in a beautiful place, but it's something that has since become an important thing to me. Something I've been trying to get better and better and better at and pursuing, where it's really altered the course of my life. I mean, I'm still a dentist. That's like how I earn money, but man, if money's out the window and you just do what you love, I love being a photographer. And I had no idea at age 32 that I would say, I love being a photographer at age 38, but I do. And so opportunities are ahead of you. One thing I'm really jealous of this generation, you can learn anything you want. You don't have to learn from, and maybe this isn't what I should be saying in a school setting. You don't have to learn in school. You can learn anywhere from anyone about anything. And there's just so many more resources available to you. When we were kids, we played basketball and we watched sports, and that's just what everybody did. And I look at my kids as they're growing up, their interests, they are not a homogenous milkshake like we were, Right. We grew up and we were kind of just like each other. Like we all had the same hobbies because that's what kids did. And this generation coming up, I mean, my son, who's now about to turn 13, he went through this phase as a kindergartner where he was really into making domino trains where you just knock them down. They kind of turn into Rube Goldberg machines. And he got really good at it. And so he was having fun with it. So I said, hey, let's go on YouTube and see what other people do. And he just having that resource available, just going to YouTube and looking up other domino things people have built, he got all these ideas, and he started building these huge towers at the end of his little train, and he'd knock them down and these big elaborate things. I was in awe of him because I tried to join in after he'd been doing this for 6 months, and he was kicking my butt. His little fingers were so gifted at how to balance them and build them quickly. And I thought, this kid is a prodigy. It's something that I'd never crossed my mind other than when I was a kid, let's line up 20 of them and watch them fall and yeah, good for us. But then the resource of YouTube saying, hey, here's what other people are doing, inspired ideas in him. So I'm not saying every kid has to go to YouTube and look up domino things, but if you're bored, yeah, get some dominoes and do that. But whatever your interests are, pursue that. And there's no end of it. People our age like to kind of look down on apps like TikTok and things like that. But man, the creativity that TikTok inspires is cool. If you were sitting alone in your room, there's no way you'd come up with these things all by yourself. But to see other people do creative things and cool things and fun things and then say, okay, what can I do differently? What's my own twist I can do on that? What's my original thought I can contribute to this? That's what life is. And so, I mean, it's just really cool for me to see this generation and the things they're capable of. So welcome boredom. You know, when you feel bored, embrace that, lean into it and say, all right, what are we going to do that we had no idea yesterday was going to happen to us?
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Needed to silence my phone. I guess that means we're wrapping up. Well,
Yeah,
Benji,
yeah.
thank you. Great story, great advice. If people want to find out more about you, you said your photography site is Alaska Kayak?
Alaskan kayak with an N in the middle.
Okay.
So like I'm the Alaskan and I'm in my kayak, alaskankayak.com. And then, and yeah, that's my Instagram handle. That's where I do a lot of my interacting with social media, but the website where photos, blog, all that stuff is there.
Perfect. All right. We'll send them over there. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll sign off.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
You too.